Summer 1944. Monowitz labor camp, part of the Auschwitz complex. British POW Denis Avey watches Jewish prisoners being worked to death, building a synthetic rubber factory. Striped uniforms, skeletal bodies, guards beating them for moving too slowly. Every day, hundreds dying. Every night, bodies carried out. This is genocide happening in front of him. And Denis Avey claims he did something nobody else has ever done. He smuggled himself inside Auschwitz-Birkenau twice, swapped uniforms with a Jewish prisoner, spent 2 nights witnessing the death camp from the inside, then smuggled himself back out to the British POW barracks. For 60 years, he tells this story. Nobody believes him. Fellow POWs call him a liar. Historians dismiss it as impossible. Auschwitz survivors say it couldn't have happened. The story is too extreme, too dangerous, too unbelievable. Then, in 2009, a BBC investigation verifies parts of his account. He was a POW at Monowitz. He did help a Jewish prisoner named Ernst Lobenthal survive. He did witness atrocities. The British government awards him recognition as a British hero of the Holocaust. But the central claim, the swap, remains disputed. Some call him a hero, others call him a fraud. The truth, as always, is more complicated. This is the story of Denis Avey, what he claims he did, what we know he did, and why the controversy matters more than the answer. Denis Avey is born July 11, 1919, in Essex, England. Working-class family, tough upbringing, joins the British Army young. When war breaks out, he's assigned to the 7th Armored Division, the Desert Rats, North Africa campaign, fighting Rommel's Afrika Korps in brutal desert conditions. He's good at it, aggressive, fearless, maybe too fearless. His commanding officers note he's difficult to control, doesn't follow orders well, takes unnecessary risks. May 1941, Battle of Sidi Rezeg, Libya. Denis is operating a Bren gun carrier when German tanks surround his unit. Most surrender immediately. Denis doesn't. He keeps fighting until his vehicle is destroyed, captured. Now he's a POW. The Germans ship him to Italy first, prisoner of war camps in Italian hands. Then, in 1943, Italy surrenders. Chaos. The Germans take over the camps. Denis and thousands of other POWs are transferred north, to Germany, to Poland, to labor camps feeding the Nazi war machine. He ends up at E715, a POW camp adjacent to Monowitz, also called Auschwitz III. This isn't the extermination camp. This is the labor camp. IG Farben, the German chemical conglomerate, is building Buna-Monowitz, a synthetic rubber and fuel factory. They need workers, cheap workers, expendable workers. So they use concentration camp prisoners. Jews from Auschwitz-Birkenau work alongside POWs from E715, technically separate, technically different. But Denis sees them every day, watches them die. Slowly, systematically, deliberately. The conditions for British POWs are bad. Inadequate food, hard labor, brutal guards, but they're protected by the Geneva Convention. They receive Red Cross parcels. They're not being systematically murdered. The Jewish prisoners have no protection, no parcels, no Geneva Convention. Just work until you die, then get replaced by the next transport. Denis watches this, day after day, month after month, and it breaks something inside him. Or maybe it awakens something. The anger he had fighting in the desert, the refusal to surrender, the recklessness his officers noted. It all focuses on one question: what can I do? This is where Denis Avey's story becomes controversial. He claims that in summer 1944, he makes contact with a Jewish prisoner, a Dutch Jew named Hans. They talk through the wire separating POW camp from concentration camp. Denis asks questions. "What's it like in there?" Hans tells him. "It's hell, worse than you can imagine. The selections, the gas chambers, the crematoria." Denis doesn't fully believe it, can't fully believe it. How could civilized Germany do such things? He needs to see for himself. So he proposes something insane, a swap. Denis will give Hans his British POW uniform. Hans will give Denis his striped concentration camp uniform. Denis will spend the night inside Auschwitz, experience it, witness it, then they'll swap back the next day. Hans thinks he's crazy. You'll be killed, Denis insists. One night, I need to see. I need to know. Hans eventually agrees. Maybe he thinks Denis won't go through with it. Maybe he's desperate for one night of better conditions. Maybe he's just too exhausted to argue. The swap happens at dusk. They find a blind spot in the wire. Exchange uniforms quickly. Denis walks into Auschwitz wearing stripes. Hans walks into E7-15 wearing British uniform. Denis is now prisoner number unknown, just another skeletal Jew in a camp full of them. Nobody notices. Why would they? Faces blend together when you're starving, when you're dying, when you're already dead. Denis claims he spends 2 nights inside Auschwitz-Birkenau, 2 nights witnessing what historians will later call the Holocaust. He sees the overcrowded barracks, hundreds crammed into spaces designed for dozens. No sanitation, disease everywhere, the smell of death, literal death, bodies stacked like wood. He sees the selections. SS officers pointing left or right. Left means work. Right means gas chamber. He sees the crematoria smoking, 24 hours a day. Burning bodies, the sky gray with ash. Ash that used to be people. According to Denis, he also witnesses something specific. A prisoner trying to steal food, caught by capos, beaten to death. Right there, in front of everyone. Message sent. This is what happens when you steal. Denis watches. Can't intervene, can't help, just witness, just see, just know. He spends 2 nights like this. Then swaps back with Hans, returns to E7-15, returns to being a British POW. But he's not the same, can't be the same. You don't witness genocide and stay unchanged. Here's where we separate claim from fact. Because Denis Avey's story about breaking into Auschwitz is disputed, but other parts aren't. These are verified. These are true. These matter. Denis Avey was a POW at E7-15, adjacent to Monowitz. This is documented. His POW records confirm it. He was working at the Buna synthetic rubber plant. He did have contact with Jewish concentration camp prisoners. The camps were separate, but workers mingled during labor. Conversations could happen. Help could be exchanged. Denis befriends a Jewish prisoner, not Hans, a different man, Ernst Lobethal, a German Jew, engineer, prisoner number 1700776. Ernst is dying, slowly starving like everyone else. Denis does something that could get him killed. He smuggles cigarettes to Ernst. Cigarettes are currency, can be traded for food, for medicine, for survival. Denis risks his life repeatedly to help Ernst survive. This is documented. Ernst survives the war, moves to America, lives until 2001. In video testimony recorded in 1995, Ernst confirms Denis helped him, saved his life. Denis also witnesses atrocities. This isn't disputed. POWs at E7-15 could see what was happening. The smoke from crematoria, the selections, the deaths. You couldn't work near Auschwitz and not know. Many POWs testified after the war about what they witnessed. Denis is one of them. His testimony aligns with others. The details match historical record. The controversy is the swap, the claim he deliberately entered Auschwitz as a prisoner. That's what historians question. Why? Several reasons. First, fellow POWs say they never heard about it. If Denis did something that crazy, wouldn't he tell someone? Wouldn't word spread? Second, the logistics seem impossible. How do you swap uniforms without being caught? The guards watched everything. The capos watched everything. Other prisoners watched everything. How does nobody notice? Third, Ernst Lobenthal never mentioned it. In his 1995 video testimony, Ernst talks about Denis helping him with cigarettes. No mention of any swap. No mention of Denis entering the camp as prisoner. If it happened, wouldn't Ernst know? Wouldn't he mention it? Fourth, the details in Denis's story change. Different interviews, different accounts. Sometimes it's Hans, sometimes it's someone else. Sometimes 2 nights, sometimes different duration. The inconsistencies raise questions. Denis Avey returns to England after liberation in 1945. He's traumatized, what we'd now call PTSD, shell shock, combat stress. He saw things in the desert, saw worse things at Auschwitz. He drinks, he struggles, he marries, has daughters, works various jobs. He tries to tell people what he witnessed. Nobody wants to hear, not in 1945, not in 1950, not in 1970. Britain wants to move on. The war is over. Why dwell on horrors? He writes to the BBC in the 1960s, offers to testify about Auschwitz. They're not interested. He contacts the Imperial War Museum. They don't follow up. He tells friends, family, anyone who'll listen. Most don't. Believe him. Breaking into Auschwitz? That's impossible. That's fantasy. That's the trauma talking. Slowly, Denis stops talking about it. Why share a story nobody believes? Why relive trauma nobody cares about? Decades pass. Ernst Lobenthal is alive in America. Denis doesn't know this. Ernst knows Denis helped him, but doesn't know how to find him. They're separated by ocean and decades and the assumption they'll never meet again. Denis grows old. The memories don't fade. If anything, they intensify. He needs people to know, needs to tell the story before he dies, before the last witnesses are gone. Ernst Lobenthal dies in Maryland. His video testimony is archived at the USC Shoah Foundation. In it, he mentions a British POW who helped him, gave him cigarettes, kept him alive. He doesn't remember the name, just that a British soldier risked his life to help a Jew when nobody else would. Denis is 85 years old. He contacts the BBC again. This time, they listen, maybe because he's old, maybe because Holocaust survivors are dying, maybe because enough time has passed that people want to hear. The BBC investigates. They find Ernst's video testimony. They match timelines. They verify Denis was at E715. They can't verify the swap into Auschwitz, but they can verify he helped Ernst. They can verify he witnessed atrocities. They produce a documentary, aired 2005. The story gets attention. Finally, Denis Avey writes a book, The Man Who Broke into Auschwitz, published 2011, co-written with journalist Rob Broomby. The book details everything: the desert fighting, the POW camps, the swap into Auschwitz, the witnessing of genocide, the 60 years nobody believed him. It becomes a bestseller, translated into multiple languages. Denis is interviewed on television, radio, newspapers. At 92 years old, he's finally being heard. The British government honors him. December 2009, British Hero of the Holocaust Award, given to non-Jews who risked their lives to help Jews during the Holocaust. The citation mentions his help to Ernst Lobenthal, mentions his witnessing of atrocities, doesn't specifically mention the swap into Auschwitz. But the implication is there. Denis Avey is a hero. His story is recognized. Finally. Then the backlash begins. Fellow POWs come forward. They were at E715 too. They never heard about any swap. Never heard Denis mention it until decades later. Why? If he did something that extraordinary, why the silence? Why not tell someone? Historians examine the story. The logistics don't add up. The timing is unclear. The details change between tellings. Auschwitz survivors are skeptical, swapping uniforms without getting caught. In a camp where everything was watched? Impossible. The most damaging criticism comes from examination of Ernst Lobethal's testimony. He never mentioned the swap, never mentioned Denis entering Auschwitz as a prisoner. He mentioned cigarettes, help, kindness, but not the swap. If it happened, wouldn't Ernst know? Wouldn't he mention it? The absence is damning, not proof it didn't happen, but absence of proof it did. Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, refuses to recognize Denis. They can't substantiate the swap claim. They acknowledge he helped Ernst. They acknowledge he witnessed atrocities. But the central claim of the book, Breaking into Auschwitz, remains unverified. The World Jewish Congress calls for verification. Historians publish papers questioning the account. The debate intensifies. Denis maintains his story. It happened. He knows it happened. He lived it. Why would he lie? What does he gain? He's 92 years old. He's not seeking fame. He just wants people to know what he witnessed, to understand what happened, to remember. But the questions persist. The doubts multiply. The story that was finally believed is now questioned again. Here's why this matters. Not whether Denis Avey broke into Auschwitz. That's unknowable without proof. What matters is what the controversy reveals about memory, trauma, and witness testimony. Denis Avey suffered trauma. Combat trauma. Witness trauma. PTSD wasn't understood in 1945. Treatment didn't exist. He lived 60 years with untreated trauma. Memories aren't perfect, especially traumatic memories. The brain does strange things trying to process horror. Did Denis embellish his story? Maybe. Did he conflate different events? Possible. Did trauma distort his memories over 60 years? Likely. Does any of that erase what he actually did? No. He did help Ernst Lobethal survive. That's verified. He did witness genocide. That's confirmed. He did risk his life to smuggle cigarettes to a dying man. That's documented. Those actions are heroic regardless of whether he also swapped uniforms. The problem is, the swap became the story. The breaking into Auschwitz became the headline. The part that can't be verified became the part everyone focused on. And when that part was questioned, everything else got questioned too. Denis went from hero to suspected liar. The help he gave Ernst got overshadowed by the claim historians couldn't confirm. That's unfair. But that's what happens when extraordinary claims lack extraordinary evidence. Fellow POWs who doubt the swap don't doubt Denis was there. Don't doubt he helped prisoners. Don't doubt he witnessed atrocities. They just don't remember hearing about a swap. But absence of knowledge isn't proof of absence. Maybe Denis did it and told nobody. Maybe he kept it secret because it was insane and he didn't want to be seen as crazy. Maybe the trauma was so intense he repressed it until decades later when he finally felt safe enough to speak. We don't know. Ernst Lobethal's silence in his testimony is harder to explain. If Denis swapped into Auschwitz, Ernst would know, would remember. Why doesn't he mention it? Maybe he forgot. He was dying of starvation at the time. Memory isn't reliable under those conditions. Maybe he thought it wasn't important compared to the cigarettes that actually saved him. Maybe Denis embellished his relationship with Ernst. Maybe the swap happened with someone else and Denis conflated the stories, or maybe it didn't happen at all. April 16th, 2015. Denis Avey dies. He's 95 years old. The controversy never resolved. Some believe him completely, some doubt everything. Most fall somewhere in between. His obituary in The Guardian is titled British Hero of the Holocaust. His obituary in the Times mentions the disputed claims. Both are true, both matter. His daughters defend him. Our father wasn't a liar. He lived with trauma his entire life. He tried to tell people for 60 years, and nobody listened. When they finally did, they called him a fraud. He died without vindication, without proof, but also without being definitively disproven. The story exists in that liminal space, possible but unverified, extraordinary but unproven. Historians continued debating. Some argue the swap is impossible, the logistics don't work, the evidence doesn't exist. Others argue absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because we can't verify it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Records from Auschwitz are incomplete. Many were destroyed. Many prisoners died without testimony. Maybe Denis's story is true and we'll never prove it. Or maybe it's false and he believed it anyway. The British Hero of the Holocaust Award remains, given for his help to Ernst Lobenthal, for witnessing and testifying about genocide. Not specifically for breaking into Auschwitz, the award stands regardless of whether the swap happened, because what he definitely did was heroic enough, smuggling cigarettes to a dying prisoner, risking execution for acts of kindness, maintaining humanity in hell. That's hero enough. The book remains in print. Some editions include a new preface addressing the controversy, acknowledging the questions, presenting both sides, letting readers decide. The story is out there now, can't be taken back, can't be proven, can't be disproven. Just exists, a contested memory of contested events in the most documented genocide in history. What do we learn from Denis Avey's story? Not whether he broke into Auschwitz. We'll probably never know for certain. What we learn is about testimony, about trauma, about how we remember and misremember, about what we choose to believe and why. Denis Avey witnessed genocide. That's not disputed. He helped a Jewish prisoner survive. That's verified. He risked his life doing small acts of kindness in a place designed for cruelty. That's documented. Everything else, the swap, the 2 nights inside, the specific details, those are contested. But the core truth remains. He was there. He saw. He helped. He tried to tell the world. For 60 years, nobody listened. When they finally did, they questioned everything. That's tragedy. Not that historians doubt the swap. Historians should question claims, should demand evidence, should verify before accepting. That's their job. The tragedy is that in questioning the extraordinary claim, we almost lost the ordinary heroism. The cigarettes, the kindness, the witnessing, those matter. Those are real. Those saved a life. Ernst Lobenthal died in 2001. His video testimony remains. In it, he says a British POW helped him survive, gave him cigarettes, gave him hope, kept him human when the Nazis tried to strip that away. Ernst doesn't name Denis in the testimony, doesn't remember the name 60 years later, but he remembers the kindness, remembers someone cared when caring could get you killed. That's what survived. Not the name, the act. Denis Avey spent his last years defending his story. Some people believed him. Many doubted. He died without resolution, without proof, but also without being proven wrong. The story exists in limbo, Schrodinger's testimony, both true and false, until evidence emerges to collapse the uncertainty. Maybe it never will. Maybe this is how the story ends, in questions, in doubt, in possibility. But here's what's certain. Denis Avey was a British POW at Auschwitz III-Monowitz. He witnessed the Holocaust firsthand. He helped a Jewish prisoner survive. He tried to tell the world what he saw. Whether he broke into Auschwitz or embellished his story, or misremembered trauma, or told the absolute truth, one thing is undeniable. He stood against genocide in the small ways available to him, and 60 years later, he made sure the world knew what happened in those camps. That's worth remembering, even if we're not sure exactly how to remember it. The controversy will continue. Historians will debate. Believers will defend. Skeptics will question. And somewhere in the middle, is Denis Avey, a flawed man who did something heroic, maybe something extraordinary, definitely something worth acknowledging. Even if we're not entirely sure what that something was, remember the name Denis Avey, British hero of the Holocaust, the man who claims he broke into Auschwitz, the man who definitely helped a prisoner survive, the man whose story is more complicated than either believers or skeptics want to admit, the man who reminds us that memory is fragile, testimony is complicated, and truth sometimes exists in the space between verification and doubt.